SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity. What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
That is spectacular. I always like that introduction. It is such a lovely job done by our production team. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast from SFJ4x4.com. I am Neil, and my esteemed colleague,
Mad scientist Scott Brown.
Starting off strong today.
starting off strong.
And hashtag camper specialist now.
Camper
I've
specialist.
learned all the things about campers.
The things and the stuff.
Do you think you could confidently build one from scratch yet?
No.
Well, come help me and you'll figure that out.
I was going to say, I think you're going to be reciprocating duties here.
I can weld that frame together for you, no problem. The wall stuff, oh my God.
I think when it comes to campers, that is one of the big issues is the framework. You know, especially our older our oldest campers actually have very robust frames. Somewhere around the 80s and 90s, or maybe the 90s and 2000s. They started like just watering down the frames of the campers of the little houses. And I think that's the big sell point for a number of these specific adventure trailers.
Yes. You don't know what you don't know, and you're like, I'm going to get a light camper. Yeah. Where they lighten everything up is in the frame.
Is in that frame.
The wood part, specifically.
Greg was talking about the weight of the camper that he got from you. He stripped down to just a frame.
Yep.
And then he went and weighed it.
Yep.
I could not believe how light that was.
Yep.
That was a pop-up camper.
Yep.
For anybody who's, keeping notes. So Scott had...
It was my first camper.
You know, we could have a whole podcast on our camper and RV and toter experiences.
Yes.
Would people like to see that? That's what I'm wondering. Would the three of our listeners
comments.
Let us know if they would like to, for us to do an episode of our campers?
We've done the whole spread.
We have, from truck campers to
Truck beds.
To
enclosed trailers that shouldn't be campers.
enclosed trailers that shouldn't be campers, to
Actual campers.
to tow behind campers, to diesel pushers.
Yes.
Right. So we've Chuck says, yeah, he's in for it. Good morning, Amy.
Hi, honey.
And we
Campers you made fun of me on.
the big fiberglass egg.
The camper that Greg had just destroyed.
Why do people do?
Because I fell. Part of it fell apart while we were sleeping in it. That was really fun.
Why do we do what we do? I mean, how do we get? So I actually asked this question to my wife because those of you who know, when we do our little bit of catching up, I am building a tiny house. And so just in case you want to know a little bit about me, I am
We will find the hardest way possible to do anything.
And I'm ignorantly optimistic. And so I had said as like I don't know what kid hangs out in high school and is like, by 35, I'm going to build a house.
This guy.
So, I mean, that was like one of the things.
You know what I wanted to do when I was in high school? I wanted to rebuild my truck. No, it didn't happen.
You didn't do that?
I haven't done that yet. When I buy my own house, I'm turning the cab off the truck. I'm doing everything but that.
Interesting. I think I have accomplished my vehicular goals. Reasonably speaking, outside of my Southwest Western tour with vehicles, I have reasonably achieved my vehicular goals that I've set to this point, which I'm very proud of, and obviously, oftentimes a team effort. But even still, like my big bucket list Jeeps that I've had previously, and obviously I missed my 35, building the house by 35. But I am very proud of the house we are building, and I'm learning a lot of skills that I, obviously didn't possess previously.
Yeah, if you want to learn something, just get in there and do it.
Morning, Dave. Yeah, you got to get in. You got to do it.
I
And
expect it to blow up in your face at least 3 times, though.
and so a huge shout out
And you
to
spend 3 times more money.
let's not talk about that.
I'm just saying.
I am a little concerned about that. And a big thanks to one of our customers, our listeners, viewer, friend. He was in the contracting construction industry, and he brought out his former business partner and worked along for me on Saturday.
How many times did you get your wrist slapped?
A lot. I actually, at one point in time, I just said, "Hey, I'm okay being like the site gopher, like, I don't like. I'm just here to get you waters and sawzall blades and to ask annoying questions.
Yes.
Of the process.
You are now our children.
And that's exactly it. I mean, that's what. And these are grown men who are not, and I am who I am, and so they're, that wasn't exactly, what was. I was the property owner at first, and this guy showed up, and I'm thinking, no, dude, like I'm here to just make your life as easy as possible and to glean whatever information I can off of you, and he was super cool with that as we continue to proceed on the day, But where all this is coming from is that then I was back at it again yesterday.
With all your newfound knowledge.
Well, yeah, except for we were primarily working on the wife's garden. She's a voracious gardener, and so we were trying to split our time between the house, which we need to live in, and the garden, which makes her happy. And so, but then the weather,
Well, she should have been happy with the weather a little bit.
Well, we're happy with the rain, but not with the open construction, right?
Yeah.
Also,
Give and
we got
take.
caught, and the lattice of the fence to keep the wildlife out is down, which is very uncomfortable, right? Because we have some beautiful prize flowers in there. So that's not great. However, on our way home, and this is the long leeway up to how we get ourselves into these crazy situations. I was legitimately involved in an Amish buggy accident.
Oh
What?
boy.
Now, I want to know how many people have that in their repertoire.
Probably a very small amount, but they probably mostly live in South County,
Well,
Asheville County.
Let me ask you though: was this at the buggy's fault or yours? Because I know commonly
Oh,
it's
there.
the drunken buggy.
So, this was, we were not actually
In the
struck.
accident.
We were not actually in the accident.
You were
okay?
just a first responder.
We were a first responder to a pretty severe Amish buggy accident.
Oh, no.
Horses taken out or not taken out?
I'm
Possibly.
Scott doesn't care about the people involved. He wants to know about the horses.
Well, no, it's saying like to me a bad buggy accident usually involves a shotgun and a poor horse not making
all
it.
right.
Is
So
a level of
I have reservation of whether the horse is lame or not at this
no.
point.
Oh no!
That is
So now the people are in trouble.
that is their clan to decide one way or the other. What I understand is that the bridle broke that attaches to the buggy, and the young man who was driving, it was a young husband and wife with babies.
Oh,
no! Yeah, really, really crazy. Had attempted to pull to stop the horse via the bit, and all that did was just
Make the horse angry.
beep the horse angry, right? So then the horse took them off road over a ditch and actually ejected everyone out of the out of the
wow.
buggy. Now, I can factually tell you that as of first responding yesterday, the kids were okay. The young man had a deep gash in his head. Now, the young girl was alive and responsive and appropriate, but she was pretty severely hurt. It was really crazy. But ultimately, big shout out to some first responders in northwestern PA. They were, within minutes on the scene. Those of you who may not know, on the production side, big shout out to our producer here, Jeff the Italian Stallion, and then obviously our videographer, Davey the Savage Thompson. Jeffrey was a first responder for many years, and we have a tremendous respect for our law enforcement officers and our first responders, and big shout out to these guys in their ambulances and fire trucks and full garb, and they were out there taking care of this family quickly. Those buggies are fast. I have a video getting passed by one on the way to SOR. Yes, you do, linguist.
Yeah, we drive Jeeps.
So that is where.
Gotta qualify that.
So this is where our involvement was, and we're headed down a back road in northwestern PA, and
you get passed by the buggy.
Crest a hill. No, we crest a hill, and all of a sudden. There is an entire. I mean, it's Sunday, so the clan's all at one house, right?
Yeah.
There is 50 to 80 Amish individuals in the street. It's like a block party. Like I'm in, like downtown Cleveland in a block party.
But it's out in the field.
It's on a 4-way, right? So it's a crossroads, and Jen and I are like. We're gonna drive through a wedding, like that's what we're thinking. You know what I mean?
Barn
like,
raising around the corner.
They're sending off somebody. You know what I mean? Woo! And as we pull up, they're waving at us. Right? They're like waving us down, but it's not. Like I thought they were gonna like, hey, don't go that way because this married couple.
Somebody make a phone call.
Nope.
No.
So we're in Jen's Jeep, okay, and it's got the factory side steps. And I have a hitch extension that has the step on it so you can get on the roof or like a roof rack and stuff. They go, you know what? I almost did an accent, which is I know is not appropriate.
Use your John Wayne
We're
accent.
all totally doing that in our head now, though.
Do the John Wayne accent with this story.
No.
No, and I got called out on my Minnesotian accent as well. But I should not do accents.
No.
Because they sound great in my head, but obviously they are offensive outside. So they pull up and they go, we got word that there's that we have family in distress. So there's a horse and buggy problem up the road. Can we get a ride? And Jen and I, of course, were like,
oh my.
We're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, but I got the kids in the back. So we have Jen's mall crawling
They
JLU.
climbed on the vehicle, did they not?
I kid you not. We said yes. They put their arms in through the window, jumped up on the side steps, onto the back, holding onto her spare tire, and I started to drive.
I love it.
And I'm going like 15, 20 miles an hour, and there's a buggy in front of us with about 5 guys hanging off of it, and it's screaming, and I'm like, well, they're hanging off of that one. And I was like, I'm like out the window, and I go, are you okay? I don't want to go too fast. And he goes,
faster.
I almost did the accent again. We're fine. And I hit it. I kid you not.
Was that like an Irish attempt or what?
I don't know what that was.
I hit it. I'm doing 54, and these guys are hanging on to the spare. I'm watching them in the back, and Jen's going, oh my God. And of course, my kids are in the Jeep, and they're going, these guys are hanging on to the Jeep standing on the side steps.
There's going to be therapy later for all this.
I passed the other speeding horse and buggy, which I can't believe was going as fast as it was, and arrived at the scene to get this, to get the clan leaders and the family on site as fast as humanly possible. But just what an incredibly uncomfortable situation.
For those who can't see, the Chuck Lorre wants to know if it was a buggy full of leprechauns.
I just in my brain I sound so authentically appropriately.
You had to do it,
Amish.
even though we told him don't do it.
Oh God! I just in my brain the accents sound appropriate. So that was our interaction. But again, Jen and I as I drove away, and of course had to reassure my kids that everybody was okay. And honestly,
should never drive at 54 miles an hour with people
hanging on your vehicle. I mean,
but that was a thrill of their lifetime. I'm sure they
I was terrified.
But
I
the
thought to
adrenaline
myself,
too. They were worried about their family.
They were worried
didn't
about
care
their family.
The fact that they were doing 60 miles an hour open air.
And I really was concerned. I'm thinking to myself as I'm cruising down this road to catch up for this response. I'm thinking, what if one of these guys falls off? You know what I mean? Like now we've taken a bad situation and went worse. And again, a huge testament to first responders because they never do crazy stuff like that. I mean, Reese. All right.
You don't know about them doing that.
I guess
stuff.
what I don't know, it makes me feel better.
There's a whole reward versus risk measure that you have to weigh.
Okay.
And if it's a small child, for instance, the amount of stuff that we will do to save that child is insane.
So-
versus if it's an elderly person whose chances are slim of surviving anyways,
Oh dear.
the reward versus risk actually
Thank
fully
you
changes.
for the reality check there,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Oh, that's tough. And in this
It is tough.
situation, and God bless these people who are in those positions, as responders. In this situation, there was, without question, infantile children involved. And blessing to these parents who kept those kids safe, because we got to physically watch those kids get handed off to grandparents or some other people within the family. So just wild. So Jen and I are driving away going, do other people have these experiences? You know what I mean? Like, we have
Think
been
about how calm your life will be when you live in Conneaut full time.
It won't. It won't. It will just be some other
They'll find you.
something will find me.
Absolutely.
There's
There's always something.
There's always something.
We were in Erie yesterday and witnessed a car accident with a trailer. Car just drove straight into the back of a trailer. A guy was towing a boat trailer, and so I witnessed the accident. I jump out, run over. She literally just drove straight into it. The boat rails were in through her front bumper.
No.
And the guy gets out, looks at it, goes, "Well, there's no damage to my trailer." I'm like, "Well, you guys need to exchange info still." And
Sure.
he's like, "Nothing wrong with my trailer. I'm out of here." And he just left. And she's like, "Well, this is a rental. I guess I've got insurance on it." So
What?
and I'm sitting there like, first of all, this guy didn't have any lights on his
Yeah,
trailer.
he had
It's
no
a
lights.
It's a blacked out boat trailer with rails sticking out.
That's why he left. He was like, "No, I'm good because I don't have lights. I'm illegal, and I'm out of here, folks."
Yeah, but at the same time, she admitted that she was at fault because she just ran straight into it. So
Humans.
I'm just like, okay, if you guys are good, guess I'm out of here.
You know,
Humans.
those movies where like the whole everything's on fire kind of stuff. My wife found a thing on Facebook of an accident. I don't remember now exactly where it was, but you saw a road and then just fire, and I was like, yeah, I don't think that's a good situation right there.
No.
It must have been full of it for this weekend.
Right. Humans must distracted,
Well, there was a
going
full
100
moon
miles an hour.
last week, right?
I guess.
Mercury in retrograde. I don't know what that
Yes.
means,
Well, I
but
missed all this stuff working on my camper.
I guess. You know what? So now that we've spent 20 minutes talking about bad accents and first responding, I saw some cool things online with your car.
Yep. So Thursday I was able to bring home my motor, and now I get to do the valve train. I'll learn about that, I'm sure. And
The hard way.
the hard way. So then I've just been nose down on the camper, and I really just kind of put the motor in the garage and ignored it. And yesterday I finally rewarded myself for getting all the interior of the camper done. The floor is in, all the seating things are bolted back to the floor, the refrigerator's back in and working. Tread plates are in, caulking has happened in places, and in the bathroom. I learned about RV toilets, how they come off the floor and go back on the floor. I could have lived without that.
Why? That's nothing exciting. It's just a toilet.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my reward was, I had a little bit of time before Amy got home. I went out in the garage and pulled the bag off the motor and looked at it and realized I'm missing some parts and started making a list, and that made me sad. But holy crap, is that parts? I got about another $500 at least in parts I got to buy. Anyway,
Just when you thought you were done.
yeah, just when I thought I was done. But I was like, I have these heads that have been hanging on the wall for a year and a half, and this intake that's been hanging there for a couple of months. I want to just see what it looks like. So I put the distributor on, hung a head and two on there, put the intake on, ran the wires, and
Made it look like
like an engine. Even though it doesn't run right now, it at least looks cool, and it gives me an idea what it's going to look like in the car. So
that's awesome.
that was a cool reward, and gives me a little bit of motivation to get to that part. So
Yeah, you got to give yourself those little rewards. I think that's as builders ourselves here at SFJ. I think that's one of the things we try to do uniquely with our customers by
pictures,
giving them those pictures. And so if it's a big full build, you'll often have longitudinal. You'll have an album, or if it's your experience here is a little shorter with us, we'll do email updates with pictures so that you get that little reward for the.
I don't remember if it was Friday or Saturday. I literally heard a customer, say, "Thank you so much for the pictures. It really made a big difference."
Yeah. Because just like you putting that motor together, you feel like you know where you're going with this,
Yeah.
even though you know that there's more money to spend, there's more time and energy that has to be involved.
Yep.
But if you can kind of contextualize your experience, and I mean, just relating it back to the house, because I don't have an immediate vehicle build at the moment. It's interesting to look a year ago at our property when it was just a big open field, overgrown and needed brush hogged, and to think back on that experience. And yeah, I've got a long ways to go, but I've come a long ways as well. So it's a nice little confidence boost in the process.
Yes.
I don't know that I mentioned, folks, this is episode 34. We're 20 minutes in. This is episode 34. And we are continuing our conversation about light bars and lockers.
Part two.
Part two. And we're gonna, slightly debate the merit or value of light bars before lockers, or lockers before light bars. And then we're going to talk about selectable lockers, despite the fact that we did start that conversation last week.
Yeah,
and we're going to continue. Can't help ourselves. And we're going to continue to reiterate, some common nomenclature about the different types of traction devices or traction aids. And additionally, those of you who are listening in, who are not watching, kind of sitting between us is this odd looking, actually, you know what? I'm not even going to say what it is yet. I'm not. So those of you who are watching right now, who are participating on Facebook, drop a comment and let us know what you think this is. And those who are listening, we have this this kind of large black piece that has like white foamy stuff. It almost looks like a giant pair of Minion goggles. Yeah. We could actually like play that as a game. Like what are all like the creative things you can, like, so your goggles? It could be like a traffic Minion goggle. I'm totally with Joe Brilla. Minion goggles.
Absolutely.
Like a black and white traffic light. I don't know. I want only wrong answers for sure. Like if you know what it is, don't say. But like totally whatever. That's fun. So we've got that, and we'll be talking about that in our hashtag not sponsored. And we'll see. We'll see what this product is, how it benefits the Jeep community, and how we're intending to use it in the very near future. So, anything else you wanted to share about your?
I'm sad I didn't get Jeff a picture of the motor, because it really does look nice. But other than that, pretty good. Running downhill on the camper. I got a few little tiny things to do, and other than that,
and you are intending to use that camper coming up?
Yes, next weekend.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So Joe Brilla, you know what? It's like an anti-Madonna looking thing. Those of you who are listening in, it actually looks like, like the polar opposite of the famous Madonna's 80s.
It's like if you cut the cones off.
Like if you cut the cones off.
Anyway.
For those that can't see, Scott is wearing this.
Not by choice.
Yeah,
not by choice.
Neil made me.
Not by choice. Anyways, light bars and lockers. And we started the conversation last week.
Yep.
And
always uncomfortable when we say light bars.
It is, and we are. It's important to note we like accessory lighting. I want to start the conversation there.
Yeah,
accessory lighting. It's okay. I always say I gotta. Chuck says back-to-back toilet seat for teardrop camper. It's the couples camping potty.
It's very close and personal.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So we are pro accessory lighting. So what does that mean? Before we get into traction devices, accessory lighting is the ability to to perform a task with light, obviously. And so
Light up dark.
light up darkness. All right. I think, don't sue me, Quake. I think that was Quake's. Light up the darkness.
I had
Is
no
it
idea.
somebody's? I don't know. So we like what we subjectively call tasteful, quality lighting use.
Yeah.
So, so this idea that we have a clean, quality light output, and that's measured typically in lumen,
Mm-hmm.
and
The cheaper, the less there is in our experience.
yes, and then the clarity of the light output as well,
And the color.
and then obviously the color itself, and so.
And then you got the whole conundrum of anything over the headlights on the vehicle makes noise.
It does. So if you're unaware, because you see the big 50-inch light bar on squared off light bar running down the road, on an opposing Jeep or truck, that light bar whistles.
Sings.
It does. I don't.
As do roof baskets and pretty much anything you put on
Yeah.
top of a vehicle.
You put, what I actually, I'm going to go back. I'm going to tell a story on one of our customers. They have a Cherokee KL and
nice Jeep.
nice Jeep.
Yeah.
A great couple who own the vehicle, and they came in. We had recently serviced their sunroof.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, done a number of things to the Jeep, but in the process, she said, "Hey, you know what? I feel like I get a drip every once in a while out of my sunroof." I said, "You know what? When was the last time you serviced the seals?" And she was like, "I've never serviced the seals."
Yeah.
So that's cool.
And
we
check
can
the drains and stuff like that.
exactly. So I think you actually,
Yep.
our
Yep.
process, we clean, we vacuum, we
Blow out some stuff.
blow out some stuff, and then we moisturize the seals. We do this as part of their full service, and they come back to us a week later for maybe something else, and they said, "Oh, also, by the way, ever since you service the roof, now it whistles." It's like, that's weird. There's a noise, It's like, maybe a seal, maybe it's beyond repair,
Mm-hmm.
So I take the Jeep for the test drive. She brings it in. I take it for a test drive, and I was like, that is a weird noise, which is not the sunroof,
Mm-hmm.
And I started I looked up through the sunroof, and I got back to the shop, and I said, "Did you have
This
kayak?
Yeah. Did you have this
Did
fixture
you
on
have
your
this
roof?
kayak rack on your roof before?" She said, No. We picked it up from you guys, and we went and put the kayak rack on. And I said, "That's your kayak rack that's making noise."
Yep.
And the wind passing past it." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. We picked it up from you on a Friday. We put the kayak on, Friday night or Saturday morning to go out for the weekend."
Yep.
And, and so it makes noise. So circle back to
And
light
I'd say the
bars.
more aerodynamic the vehicle, the worse it is.
Probably. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, now the air is engineered to go over the vehicle in a particular way, at least with our Jeeps, as big, shoe boxes driving down the road.
But they still totally make noise.
They do. And if you've ever, the way to do it is to try and dial it down to make that less of a flat face of the light bar.
So then you can't see out of it.
So
anymore.
then it's angled down. So to get the pitch of the whistling, now it's down at the hood. So then it doesn't actually make sense
it blinds you.
for your use.
And they make products for that, but there's mixed reviews on whether or not it actually
Yeah, it's a
Yep.
mixed bag.
Yep. God bless the companies out there trying to solve that world issue with their little covers.
Yep.
Also, just super important to note that I and I'd love for somebody to weigh in, but I don't know that there's a single state in the union that
Loves you having that.
that's legal. To our factual knowledge, above your headlights, lights have to be covered by state law.
At least in PA, that's the case.
I know, Ohio as well, because the issue is that theoretically, it's left, to the interpretation of the law, I suppose. But each individual chip of the light bar counts as a light output.
Yep.
So when you had an incandescent light, it
Yeah,
didn't have a
go on.
cover on it.
Yeah.
that counted as one. Now you have 100 chips in this light bar. That's 100 lights, and they can theoretically fine you. Now, do I think any law enforcement officer out there specifically going after people for light bars? I don't. But if you're being a menace,
They absolutely will.
they have every right to at that point.
I actually had to bring up something similar to that over the weekend. We had a crawl over, and they had bought this Jeep, and it had, shall may not be named accessory headlights and fogs that had halo rings that were green because the Jeep is green.
Of course, that makes perfect sense.
And I said, just so you know, if you get a cop on a bad day and he decides he's got an axe to grind, he's probably going to yell at you for that. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, to my knowledge, the only lights we're allowed to have facing forward in Ohio is clear or amber. That is it.
Most states have a law against colors. Many times it's the emergency colors are the ones that are prohibited.
Yeah, if you have red and blue, they are coming for you, buddy.
Well, and
I have been there.
And circle back to accessory lighting, we have had an issue in the past with our Christmas parade. And good people, viewers, listeners, friends, followers, and customers have come from specifically Pennsylvania with their Christmas lights adorning their vehicle. They had taken the time to, zip tie their Christmas lights onto their spare. Chuck, and folks, I'm going to take a moment.
He's
and
on
weigh
fire
in.
this morning.
First of all, Chuck is on fire in a good way. And Chuck is a law enforcement officer. He's a great friend and customer of ours. And he says, correct trooper bait.
Yes.
In this part of this
Get
conversation.
your attention, and the proper attention.
And so these folks came from Pennsylvania with Christmas lights, coming to a Christmas parade, and that officer gave them the business.
Yes. I was a young man, and I had a little pickup truck that I had red lights on the hood because it was black with red trim, and I thought it was really cool. And I didn't make it one trip out, and I got pulled over by a sheriff, and I'm like, oh, crap. Sheriffs don't just pull you over for no reason.
No.
I'm sweating bullets. And he pulls up, and I'm like, what did I do? I wasn't speeding. I didn't swerve. He's like, those lights on your hood got to go. I was like, why? He's like, because they're red, and you're not allowed to have red-facing lights. I was like, okay. Like, learn them off. Thank God. I had him on a switch, and that made him calm down immediately.
Even then, even if they're on a switch, I've seen it where they'll say you got to remove them from the vehicle before you leave the spot.
I just told them I was going to when I got home, and I did. They no longer functioned after I got home. But
So accessory lighting, we are pro accessory lighting. In fact, we have done a lot of cool. We've done cool color.
yeah.
So
we just let you know to do it when you're at the Jeep event.
Do it at the Jeep event, and we have some just awesome Jeeps that are lit up. Honestly, my dad's Jeep has lots of lights and red lights, and looks great at night and in parades and whatnot. And it's about doing it in a tasteful and arguably mature manner.
Yes.
If you are the character who's running down a state route with your 50-inch light bar on and
you're going to make friends.
Underglow lights, you're not going to make the friends you want to make.
It's interesting. A lot of states, too, have laws against the underglow, but motorcycles are allowed the underglow because it makes them easier to see.
More high visibility.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think they still have a color restriction.
There are color restrictions to that, yes.
Super confusing. I can understand how people get, confused and go about doing it the wrong way.
And I think you can have orange. Yeah, I think you can again. And just
orange is kind of amber.
Amber orange. Let's just kind of call that generic. I believe is okay anywhere, anytime, anyway. I believe. I'd love for somebody to weigh in on that. Jeff might Google it, or his Jugalage, which again is Google and Jeffrey mixed together, married. Jugal. So I think amber is okay at any time, but I wonder if white. I see a lot of like the big truck market, certainly local, run around with white accent lights underneath the Jeep or underneath their trucks constantly.
I know the ones that change or flash were not good.
No, you can't have changing bright lighting, flashing stuff going on.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, folks, we're pro fun accessory lights, and
don't want you to get you a ticket.
we don't want you to get a ticket, and they are cool, and we want them to be appropriate and tasteful and interesting. You don't always need the 50-inch light bar. Sometimes you can get away with a really high quality 20-inch light bar. Do just the same thing, or a couple 3-inch pods.
And we'll put them on for you, but we'll just educate you in the process.
Correct. Now, are they going to get you if you are, inappropriately wheeling by yourself at night when the light bar actually makes sense, and then you get stuck because you've now high centered on a large stump or rock? Is that light bar going to get you
wedge
off?
it under the tire?
Ooh, you can take the 50-inch light bar off. And on one side, you can jack up with your high lift jack that you don't have.
Your
because,
new Tread Max.
And then you take your 50-inch light and you use it as a long lever.
That's not going to happen. Just put it under the tire and drive over
Tread
it.
Max.
It's an interesting idea. we might have just solved the world's problems. Like we just started. We just started.
The people that need to hear that aren't listening to us. Probably.
No, they don't. No, they don't care. I always wonder. There's a guy outside of Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival, and he sells like 50-inch light bars. So he shows up
At bargain basement prices.
and and God bless him for following the American dream and pursuing his capital entrepreneurial spirit. But he shows up in a dilapidated Toyota pickup truck, which just looks like the pizza delivery truck out of Toy Story.
The only reason they made it was because it was a Toyota. All
And-
the others would have died a long time ago.
Many years ago, decades ago. And he shows up in a some type of enclosed, cob together trailer, something that's been shoved together to sort of look like
Sure, it has all working lights and
Well, it
registration.
probably does because he's. So then he unloads. I mean, it's like. I can't. God,
150 tables.
150 tables. He's like an efficient hoarder. I don't understand it. And this thing's packed to the gills, and then he unloads all these tables and all of this. It looks like yard sale LED stuff.
Yes.
Where is he getting it? Why does it look that way?
Yes.
And who is buying it from him? He has been coming for 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
And he sets these up and he sells like 50-inch light bars for like $25. Like, you didn't buy that because you actually want it to work. You bought it just because you want to.
No, there's probably younger people buying them thinking it's awesome.
We did some stuff when we were younger.
We did some stuff.
I'm going to say this. This is my intervention. I had
All the KCs.
8 forward-facing lights on my Jeep when I was in high school.
Yeah, I never did that.
Yeah,
I
but
had-
that was back when it was just actually 8 bulbs. It wasn't LED.
Well, that's true, but it was still like silly. I still remember
the 90s version.
it was
Yeah.
the 90s version.
Absolutely.
I was that guy. I was in high school. Now don't get me wrong, I was on
All-
35s
all
and
properly wired, I'm sure.
okay, they were actually really well wired.
No house
and-
nuts?
No house nuts, and I don't think. And I actually will give this to my mom because early on I was like 17 and I took a center console, which is honestly it's a production item that's still available today. And we took the front facing compartment out of it. It was like a sunglass and like a little glove box, little front facing compartment. And I made a switch panel. And I actually wired all the lights. It was the 90s, so you had the.
Suddenly it's, Apollo 13.
Oh my God! Yeah, I thought I was driving a semi truck. That was super cool, And so I had my lights all wired onto these switch panels, and I kid you not, folks, my mom helped me make this switch panel. And because one of the things I wanted to dress it up, I wanted it to have this nice plastic, kind of this black plastic, textured plastic. And she helped me layer it with product to give it a really clean, finished look, like honestly, super clean, finished look. And I kid you not, we used the black plastic of a 5-star Trapper Keeper. and we cut it with an X-Acto knife.
That's
And
awesome.
That was the, nobody would have ever known. It really looked like a production
Tracker
item.
keepers are back.
Are they?
They are.
Huh.
I couldn't believe it.
Well, they're back because they just flat out worked. Do you remember that time we were going to talk about lockers? I'm sorry.
Trapper keepers have lockers on them.
They do.
You keep them in a locker. This derailed, folks. That derailed.
I brought it up to my wife. I was like, "Oh my god, I never thought those would be back." And she said, "It's because we had tracker keepers, and now we have children in school, and we're like, you know what they need?
They need a trapper
They
keeper.
need a trapper keeper." And fanny packs are back.
So
too.
let's talk
It's a
about
fashion trend
lockers.
that is circled around.
Folks, I love a fanny pack.
I think light bars are coming back.
What, in 20 years?
What?
We're
All
probably
right.
going to see that.
All right, we're going to
Anyway.
move off fanny packs and trapper keepers, though, despite the fact that I just absolutely
You would love
approve
a
of both.
I'm sure you would.
There's no reason a fanny pack ever should have gone out of style. It was just so highly functional.
Just look
It
back at the
flat-
family photos.
This is
Makes
the guy
and
that
sense.
carries a purse around with him.
That's true.
My man bag.
It's a purse.
It's a man bag.
Purse.
It's a purse that you've repurposed as a man bag.
It is a man bag.
Was it sold in the women's
It
section?
was sold as a men's man bag.
It's because it didn't sell in the women's section, so they moved it. Oldest trick in retail.
Yep.
You know what? I'm gonna bring my man bag in, and we'll put it on. We'll take a picture. We'll put it on one of the future episodes, and we'll let other people weigh in. Is that a purse or a man bag? It's a man bag,
My
and I'm,
wife literally carries
I-
the same thing, and it's
I
a purse.
love.
Look, there's
my
no
man
shame in
bag.
a man carrying a purse. I'm not saying that. I'm
It's-
just telling you it is
He's
a
the one
purse.
that's really pushing the envelope there.
My God, where we were talking about lockers. Focus.
This is why it goes
We
on
started.
so long.
We're gonna have we're only gonna talk about 10 minutes of lockers today, guys, because our program, and the ability for you not to go to bed while watching us. No judging here. So we're going to talk about those lockers finally. We talked about a little bit of the merit of lights, of clean quality accessory lighting. I love products from Rigid, from JW Speaker, from KC, from that's pretty much Quake a little bit. That's pretty much the extent of. I've seen a couple companies, XK Glow's coming out with some stuff, X-Bright, some of those more import brands. But and Nightlight. I actually really like Nightlight as products are concerned. But when it comes to traction devices, things that we're actually very passionate about, and we started the conversation last week, and we had some good interaction regarding air-activated aux lockers, I started to bridge that conversation about the umbrella of lockers or traction devices. So common nomenclature will just simply call that a locker, meaning the average dealership salesman may mistakenly say, this Willys Jeep, when I say Willys, I mean anything produced 2015 and newer.
Yeah.
Willys package, it's got a locker in the back of it. It's great. I've heard plenty of customers come in and with Sahara
the
or Willys.
off-road package.
I've got that off-road. I've got that locker in the back. It's pretty cool, And it's like, and then you don't want to be that guy at the party who's like, well, actually, I'm going to Google it and tell you the actual, specifics of what that is. But the reality is it's a traction device. And it would not be appropriate to call it a locker. However, people do. And so we're not going to judge. However, under that umbrella, you have on one end of the spectrum, you have, I'm just going to straight up call it a spool or a fully locked rear axle. Typically, you see that in
Or front, depending if you're how hardcore you are.
how hardcore you are, and you have assisted steering and all that kind of stuff. We see spooled axles specifically in like the buggy, the comp wheelers. Basically, you've turned your Jeep or truck or whatever into Grandpa's tractor, and so you've locked both wheels through basically a sleeve.
Yep.
Which as power comes in through the drive shaft into the pinion as it transfers onto the ring, at that point in time the ring moves. Basically, it's the old four-wheelers and go-karts or maybe your bicycle, where you have a sprocket, and then the wheels are attached to it.
Yep.
They move at the same rate, and as you go around a corner, one tire
You scrub a tire.
you scrub a tire scrub.
And loose, like dirt or sand or gravel or anything like that.
No problem.
No problem. Put that on pavement, dry.
Lots of squawky, squeaky, rubby tires.
Yep.
Additionally, we actually have a bone stock late model TJ,
Yes.
which somebody had inappropriately Lincoln locked.
Which those that don't know means you get your MIG welder out or stick welder, and you fill the center with weld to make a spool.
Oh, that was so much fun to work
You
on.
pull the weld into the spider gears.
Everybody I've ever known doing that never intended to work on it.
Nope, there's it's a momentary gain, long-term loss. And Jeffrey had to spend like
we
4
should have
hours
a
cutting
moment
it
of
out.
silence for that Dana 35.
Yeah, that was crazy. But it's fascinating that they chose to spool in an appropriate manner, Lincoln lock. Now, that's not to say, let me just sidebar real quick. You can Lincoln lock well if you're a competent welder,
Yeah.
and you take the time to prep your surface.
I remember being a
Most people don't.
young person reading on Pirate how to properly Lincoln lock your axle.
Yes, without question. Most people don't, though.
No.
That's just the reality. That's something you do at 3 a.m. with some liquid courage, and you're like,
Yes.
I'm making a choice.
Yep. And then it breaks loose, and then that's really scary.
When it breaks loose. I don't know that this broke loose because, of
No.
course, the rotational mass of the
It
tires
was
is
snapped an
nominal.
axle shaft.
I think it's fascinating. This is a bone stock Jeep, and it had just like the normal little 225, 75, 15s or whatever on them.
Yeah.
And those tires are worn down because
so bad.
that rear was scrubbing
And the
constantly.
little 2.4 was very angry.
So here we have on that spectrum, that umbrella, we have what I'm called the spool, and then the Lincoln lock or the welded rear end. You have selectable lockers, as we mentioned last week. We started the conversation. That's going to be your aux, your air, and your E, or your electric. Then we're going to move into limited slip differentials, and limited slip differentials are basically they kind of start open and then they lock up through traction loss. Slightly removed from them, we mainly price point wise, we move into lunchbox lockers, which are basically traction devices that are inserted into where your spider gears are. And I guess for splitting hair purposes, we have to mention spider gears, which are actually how an open axle works, because I think it's important to understand that how a spider gear works to then understand why we need a traction device as well, and that in relative sense, a spider gear is a kind of a traction. It allows traction on road.
Yes.
And it allows you to maintain appropriate traction on road, because that was always the argument of a spooled or locked or solid axle that's solidly connected.
Yeah, with lack of any traction, one wheel will spin. With traction, both will spin.
Correct. And so
Which
as
is
you're
kinda
cornering, you want the ability for those tires to spin, maintaining
different
appropriate traction at different speeds.
Yes.
So, as I say, it would be remiss not to bring up spider gears. Now, do you want just a brief explanation of spiders?
Spider gears?
Yeah.
So we have 2 larger gears on the axle shafts and 2 smaller ones, usually on a pin. On some limited slips, they put clutches behind those to force them together, make them harder to turn, is one style. Why you don't want to just spin one wheel real fast and then have the other one stop, because the spiders are in there running like a little hamster on a wheel, going 100 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had Jeeps come in and we're like, oh, you got this stuck. And they're like, how did you know? Because your spider gears are pitted and chewed and look like they were on fire.
Yep.
And that's what happened. And that's why, don't just keep spinning the tires.
Yeah.
It's not going to make you get out.
Do you remember were you ever part of the conversation as a young man where I feel like at some point in time, every teenager who's into 4x4s has to have the conversation of, is it 4-wheel drive or is it
2x2?
2x2?
Yeah.
Old men and their coffee saving the
Yeah.
world. Somebody came up with this concept, the fact that basically you actually only have one wheel with energy transfer in the rear and one wheel with energy transfer
Which
in
are
the front.
technically not wrong if you were to pick the vehicle up and just let the wheels spin. But when they're actually attached to the road, it works differently. Now, if you're in a slippery situation like ice or snow, sort of. I mean, my dad used to tell a story. He had a little Scout with a improper sized plate on the front of it, and he had clutch posies front and rear, and the thing was a little tank pushing snow. Well, that's purpose built. Made sense. He had little bitty tires on it because he was all Mr. Sensible.
Right, factory size tires, probably.
Factory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
factory itty bitty. You just called factory tires itty bitty.
Yes.
Okay.
That happened.
Yeah,
I drive something with 37s every day, so
that's fine.
happens.
That's fine.
He would
as
have
we
a
contextual-
fit, though.
He would. Oh God, he would talk about all the functional purposes, the money you spent,
man.
wasted fuel.
Oh, so many.
I still
things.
remember my grandfather. I came rolling in. I was 17. I had 35s, and nobody else had 35s, and he was like, "I've got big tires like that too. They're in the barn."
On the tractor.
No, he had 31s.
Oh. Oh no.
He had 31s. I found him later, years on. You know what I mean? And he had a stack of Gumbo Mutter 31s. So Chuck wants us to move on with our storyline. Here's what he's saying. So
we touched on it a little bit last week. Air lockers just have a little higher clamping pressure than an e-locker does, but then they require an air compressor and plumbing and solenoids and stuff. I looked at it personally. This is just my opinion. When I was doing my Jeep, I don't require electrical input regardless, and I didn't really want to spend the money on an air compressor right now, so I went for the e-locker. For what I do, it works fine. Now, if you're going to go into giant boulders and climb things the size of your Jeep, there is a chance that electric could give up because it doesn't have the clamping pressure required. And then at that point, then you get Chuck Norris Jeep over there, and that locker is not going to give up. He has tons, and I have
When
a
it works.
44.
yeah, when it works, and I climb a tree stump.
Well,
and
when
don't
he
get embarrassed.
actually has an air compressor and it plumbed and everything, and
all of
that's my
relative,
point. is
Relative.
Now you have to have that extra system.
So if we circle back around, and so obviously we contextualize with having our open differentials, which doesn't mean they're actually open. There's those spider gears in there doing what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
As the mad scientist was explaining to us. Now we move into that first level as we put spools and welded axles slightly aside. We move into what most people traditionally understand as a selectable locker.
And basically, it's a have your cake and eat it too situation where I want my Jeep to drive down the road as boring as possible.
I want my road manners.
But then when I go off into the obstacle,
Yes.
I can then appropriately do what I need to do.
So once we enter that category, and I will say that I am fairly up to date. However, not I didn't sit down and look at the notes this morning to see exactly what this market currently has. How people are, what little tweaks and redesigns they've done. What I can tell you is that within that market, we have the aux locker, which is mechanically activated, but they do have air and they do have electric actuators available for the aux.
Mm-hmm.
Then in our air, we have ARB and we have the Yukon Zip. And then in our electric, we have arguably 3, though people only talk about 2. Okay, so that's very important. We have the Eaton E-Locker. We have the Auburn E-Locker or ECTED. And then we have the factory Jeep Rubicon lockers available from 2007 and up. and those are electrically activated. Okay. Now, why I exclude the 03 to 06 Rubicon locker is because that is actually a inferior air design.
4 psi or less.
Somewhere between 3 and 6 psi activate that air bladder in those lockers. The clamping pressure was good when they worked, but it's just a whole. I could talk at length about those, and they are unfortunately a rare and dying breed because their air lockers are no longer available. There is no way to regulate regularly down to 4 to 6 psi, and they're highly, highly, highly expensive. So when we talk about those lockers moving forward, the e-lockers, Eaton e-locker, and the Auburn Ected, and then the factory Rubicon axles, whether it be JK, JL, or JT at this point, are all electrically activated lockers. And so basically we have a large magnet. Were you about to say something?
I was just going to say that kind of made me think of when they first did the Rubicon in 03 or right before 03. What they were doing was looking at the buggies going down the trail, and they were like, okay, we need to do that.
Correct.
To have that. We need a 4-to-1, we need an air locker, that kind of stuff to make this make sense. And they think they learned through the TJ process.
Yeah, the process with the TJ.
Is we aren't actually trying to, the bell curve is more down here, and where they were was up here.
Yes.
And we need actually, an e-locker makes more sense for Joe average bell curve of people. The guy that's going to once a month go out and wheel or a couple of times a month, that kind of thing.
Oh, look at that. Dave says, love Auburn lockers made here in my hometown. And yeah, I wonder, it's Auburn. I think it's Auburn, Indiana. I would love Dave to weigh in on that just a second if he has the opportunity. So
I think, but anyway, I think that's why you see the factory change, just because it's a little easier to service. It makes more sense for Joe average.
I agree 100%. And part of the design flaw that they did as well in that early Rubicon was they put these two little independent air pumps. Again, it was
the belly pan.
They put it on the belly pan. And so it was an air pump per locker.
Yeah.
So most of our air systems that we do for customers to this point are a singular air pump to a I'm going to read that in a second. A singular air pump to a reservoir, plumbed then independently to solenoids to either locker. So we start with a singular air source, then we add capacity, and then we add the ability to turn it on and off electrically over the air, right? So that's our solenoid. What Jeep was doing at that time was just having a direct drive little air compressor that basically, if you go to any fast food restaurant today and you grab yourself a straw and you blow, that's as hard as those lockers needed to activate.
Yes.
And again, as Scott mentioned, they then put them in the belly pan where all the road schmutz and the you're doing water crossings and you're smashing that belly pan off of rocks and obstacles. It wasn't a great design. So the JK,
it was great for the time.
It allowed us a baseline. You're right. And I think I agree entirely with your that it was a little bit above the pay grade of the bell curve of the average user.
Yes.
And
I think that maybe the engineers, the I can't remember the name, but they called Jeep people that actually go out and use their Jeeps in Jeep corporate, but went back to the engineers and were like, well, we need to have this. And the guy that was designing that went, well, I know I have an air compressor for a suspension kit.
Yes.
On this luxury car. I guess I can kind of repurpose that over here, and I kind of can work with what I have. And I don't think that's exactly what the guy that uses his Jeep at corporate thought was going to happen.
Right. Well, and then I would argue as well, just by the time that the 07 Rubicon, JK Rubicon comes out, that we had just progressed with tooling and understanding how to make those lockers, those electric lockers, more robust for application.
I would say, just 5 years, we learned and gained a lot of technology there.
And so I will. So I know that it's a 3-letter acronym so the OE provider is not. So a big misnomer is that it's Eaton. It is not, and it is not Auburn. It is a third company. And it's a 3-letter acronym, and it evades me at this moment, but it's like GKN or KGN. It's not NGK because I know I always like mix, that up. But it's this 3-letter nondescript acronym, and it's just a really robust traction, company who's building for the OE manufacturers. And so what ends up happening is you have an electromagnet that as you energize, giving it voltage via a switch, it creates clamping pressure, right? Magnet moves over, it kind of twists and allows these cogs to grip. And so if you're listening, you can't hear my finger, you can't hear my fingers going together, but they are. And so, now it has teeth and the teeth interlock. So now the magnet itself is not holding things together. The teeth and then the natural binding process as energy
the magnet
transfers.
Just has to move it and kind of keep it there.
The magnet just has to move it.
Yeah.
With that said, it has arguably the least amount of clamping pressure available between air and mechanical pressure. So once those cogs have meshed, is there side load force applied? Whereas the air and the mechanical has side load force applied to the cogs, keeping them together. Whereas as you get through an obstacle and you have such strain and bind on those teeth as you're going through an obstacle, they may give up and pop out and then hammer back together. It sounds awful. It sounds like your axle is breaking. I've personally experienced it. I've experienced it with customers. It's not great, but it's also not the end of the world. Again, if we come back to, Eaton makes it, Auburn makes an electric as well. And then, the Rubicon works the same manner. The big thing that Auburn as a manufacturer is very proud of is that they are still, majority of their product lines are made here in the US of A. And I will say that much of our e-lockers from Eaton are made overseas. With that said, Eaton has better aftermarket support to our industry, and Auburn has good aftermarket support, but they have kind of shifted between heavy truck and ag equipment and to aftermarket support. And I think it just has to do with the structure of the company itself. We used a lot of Auburn Ectids in the beginning. That was the response to trying to have your cake and eat it too. The Auburn Ectid had a series of posi clutches or clutch-driven traction inside their cogs. And so it was always kind of a posi, and then you would flip the switch and then it would cog together. The downside of that is those clutches are actually very small, and our big tires wore them out quickly. So just a piece that we learned early on. And of course, it requires a friction modifier. We'll actually end up talking about limited slip differentials and how that process works in next week's episode. But that was the slight downside to the Auburn Ectid, but Auburn does have, e-lockers available as well. So selectable locker starts open. It gives you all those road manners. And then via the flip of a switch or a pull of a cable, it locks the energy transfer to whatever axle you're using equilaterally, which is the value of that. Do you have a favorite? Do you feel like you have the Rubicon locker in your Ultimate 44 in your Jeep?
Personally, it is so far my favorite, but I have yet to stress it enough to make it pop apart and back together. And I don't know that I will get myself in that situation very often, just with the nature of the use I do with that Jeep.
And my experience is when I have been privy to people who got them popped apart and coming back together, it's all skinny pedal. It's obstacle
Yeah,
and
it's not
skinny
how I
pedal,
wheel.
and it's not how you wheel.
Nope.
And honestly,
I can test that for you.
Hey, I helped Jeff get better gas mileage. Just saying.
wow.
Yeah, on the way down. That was bad.
So, folks, that was our
Sad to get
selectable lockers. We have, 4 or 5 of them available to our aftermarket industry. They start open, and then via your input, they then lock. And so, that's important, is they require an additional system, and then your input, you as the user, to lock or engage them. Next week, we'll be talking about limited slip differentials. They just kind of, I like to use the term set it and forget it. You get to install them, and then they work. You don't have to be the most conscientious wheeler, but there are pros and cons to that. And who knows how far we'll get through next week to say whether or not the conversation will end there. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, let us know. Put something in the comments. Make sure you're heading over to our new YouTube channel to follow along there and ask any questions you might have. And as these light bars and lockers conversations kind of continue, we obviously don't want to kick a dead horse and keep running with this, but we want to answer your questions as needed. So without further ado,
and now it's time.
yeah, we have it.
Hashtag not sponsored.
It cut out for a second.
It did
know.
cut
Okay.
out. What?
Okay.
Not sponsored.
Wasn't ready for that.
It wasn't ready.
Threw me off my game.
It did
Threw
not
the computer
understand.
off the game.
The
and cut
computer,
audio out.
the computer did not understand the assignment. So, what's the right answer to the Minion Goggle, not Madonna piece here?
So it holds 2 speakers, and you mount it in the middle of your Jeep. Your shifters and stuff will, occupy this space here. It is made to fit the tunnel.
If you are a JLJK guy, this has nothing to do with you.
Yep.
Sorry. Or an XJ. Really, this is just YJs and older.
They do make some sort of things like this for back of JKs for subs and stuff like that. So I'll say it applies to some. And
it does. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're making a gross generalization.
yes.
Okay, for
What
speaker
my intention
enclosures.
was this is just the fact that you're not just limited to where the original speaker went in your vehicle. You can get housings like this to move them into a different location. And what specifically he was talking about, this is for the Renegade project in the CJ7 or CJ corner. And those that don't know, back in like 77, 78, 79, your VIN number was on a sticker. It was on the dash right inside the door. And we actually deal with this so limited, I forget that this is a thing. And they only have one speaker grill. So stock, that AM radio only needed one crackly
little paper cone
to work. So now you want to put in a nice Bluetooth stereo that they make that actually fits the dash and hook up to your phone, and you want to have multiple speakers. Suddenly there's not a spot like in the 82 and up. The 86 has a spot for it. So you can't just have one front speaker. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to have 2 good quality speakers in a sealed enclosure. Obviously they have the
sound deadening
material, and you can.
And Chuck's comment there, I think it's more than sound deadening material; it's absorption material.
No.
Yeah, I don't know how much it's absorbing, but anyway, and then it allows us to give a new quality sound with an old vintage wrapper. If Ryan Simons is watching, we probably need to get one of these for
Probably
yours.
want one of these yourself, Ryan.
Yep.
This unit I remember just daydreaming about when I was in
they
high
had
school.
all the cool ones back in the day.
They did, and there's certain pods that go by your roll bar
Had
for
cup holders.
And what's neat, it gives you this big flange, which can be opened up for a bigger size speaker. I believe this is like for a 4.5 inch.
Yep.
There's no mounting holes, so you can use whatever configuration of
Very
speaker you want.
universal.
and then they give you like this little, little port back here to run your wires in. And then this specific one, it goes on that tunnel, and it goes arguably right in front of, there's an air duct split off.
Yep.
And again, with the YJs, it kind of cleared just perfectly, and these speakers kind of face the driver and the passenger. Just a really cool piece to add some beats to your, to kind of affordably add some clear sound and some tunes on your drive.
I mean, all this talk about light bars and lockers, we got to talk about Beats.
We, in the future, oh my gosh, we could have a Beats conversation and appropriately tuning your Jeep. So that is the right answer. This is a speaker pod box, specifically geared towards our older, our older Jeeps, but a little fun with that. So a very cool product. Folks, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, points of clarification, let us know. Hit us up online, drop a comment. If you have not liked and subscribed to our new I Speak Jeep podcast channel, please head over there. Do that now. If you are listening on your favorite streaming platform, we thank you. We appreciate that. Take a moment, log out and leave us a review and tell people, what a great show we're putting on, for all, Jeep lovers and auto enthusiasts alike. If you are watching on Facebook, this will be up for, just under 24 hours. It'll come off. It'll go on to streaming by Wednesday and onto YouTube by Friday. So get your content in now, share with your friends, and we appreciate you spreading the message. Head over to our website, sfj4x4.com, buy yourself a cool shirt that ideally the color matches your Jeep. You can represent accordingly with that very cool, Jeep Wave grill picture on there. So Jeep family, we've had a blast and we'll do it again next week, 10:19 a.m. on Facebook. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.